What happens after your home offer gets accepted? If your answer is, wait for closing, you're not alone. A few years ago, I worked with a first time home buyer who, after their offer got accepted, the next day they called me and said, "So, do I start packing now?" It's not quite that simple. The truth is, this is where the real work begins. Earnest money, appraisals, title companies that do way more than you even think they do. In this video, I'm breaking down what happens between offer accepted and keys in hand so that you're not blindsided by anything. Hey, I'm Brian. I'm a realtor in Indianapolis and I specialize in working with first time home buyers. So if you're wondering what happens after you get under contract, you're in the right place. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and feel free to share this information with whomever you think might need to hear it. Let's get into what happens after your offer is accepted. Well, congratulations. Your offer got accepted, and now the real work begins. So, within hopefully the day of or the next day after your offer is accepted, your realtor has talked to you and hopefully sent you information about what happens next. And that's what I do with all of my buyers is I send them an email that details all of the next steps that they're going to have to do and what to expect in the coming days and weeks. So, one of the first things, and by the way, I do want to add a disclaimer this is for home buyers in the Indiana or Indianapolis, maybe even more specifically, area. Not every state has the same process and procedures. And so I do want to clarify that this is just for Indiana residents, though other states are probably very similar. All right. So here in Indiana, there is something called earnest money. Now, truth be told, earnest money is not required in the state of Indiana, but it is considered good form. Uh, Back in the day, I bought my first house back in the 1900s, 1990s specifically. It was called a good faith payment. Now, the good faith payment basically was you telling the seller that you are serious about the purchase of their home and you're willing to put X amount of dollars on the line at the beginning of this that goes towards your first payment on the house, but it basically is a hold on the house. Again, not required, but traditionally, it's about 1% of the purchase price. Now, doesn't have to be that exactly. I have had a case where a buyer bought a home for $280,000. Well, 1% of that would have been 2,800. She's like, all I have right now is $500. I said, let's try it out and see what happens. And sure enough, the offer was accepted and that worked. I've had other buyers who said they wanted to put down extra earnest money, where only a couple $1,000s was uh, would have been considered 1%. He wanted to put down $5,000 because he wanted that seller to know that he meant business. That money is on the line in case the deal falls apart. There are reasons you could lose it as a buyer. Most of the time, you would get it back if the deal falls apart, but sometimes it's lost. And so, showing the seller that you're willing to fork over potentially $5,000 that may get lost, that does show the seller that you're very serious about it. But it's all up to the individual buyers and what they have available and what makes the most sense for your deal. Now, that earnest money is usually due within a couple of business days of getting under contract. And it is part of your purchase agreement. So it does state in there when that is due. My deals, I usually ask for 3 business days, which gives my clients time to get to the bank if they need to, um, move money around, whatever they need to have that money available. Now, cashier's check would be a preferred way to do it because it is a secure check that we know the funds are in there from the bank. There are some companies that have you do it electronically online through a website or potentially wire it to a company that will hold on to that money. Technically, earnest money goes to the seller, but it's not actually given to the seller until closing. So it's not like you're paying them to take over their house right now. They don't even get to hold that money. It is held by either the realtor or a title company in an account that doesn't earn any interest. So nobody is benefiting from that money just sitting there. It is really just there held in place to be used and added to the closing. Now, if you're the buyer here, that money is technically goes towards your down payment and everything that you owe at closing. So if you put down, let's say, $2,000 as earnest money, let's say that your loan, you owe $10,000 down payment plus whatever closing costs and other fees are involved at closing. Well, when you get to that final wiring of the money, you've already put $2,000 towards that. So it's a little less money that is owed at closing. The next big item on the list of things to tackle is an inspection. Now, in my deals, I pretty much recommend everybody get a home inspection. It doesn't matter if the home is 100 years old or whether the home is brand new construction that was just built. I highly recommend that everybody has an inspection. Now, if you happen to be a contractor or own some sort of a construction company or have done that in the past, I might say, okay, you're kind of a professional here and you understand what you're getting into. But beyond that, I pretty much recommend everybody has a home inspection. Now, there is a deadline according to your contract of when that inspection has to be complete, along with the timeline to turn in an inspection response to the sellers. That can be anywhere from a couple of days to potentially 2 weeks. Though I'll be honest, most sellers would rather have that done sooner rather than later. And so scheduling your inspection earlier is better than later in case there are things that need to be re-inspected or you have to call in a contractor. Like, okay, a home inspection is done by someone who is a professional home inspector, but it doesn't mean that they're a professional roofer or a foundation person or a plumber. And so, with that in mind, they'll make recommendations on things that don't work, aren't working properly, potentially need to be replaced. But you may need to have to call in a professional if they say that there's something wrong with the roof leaking or some unusual things up in the attic. Well, you may need to call in a professional roofer to have that analyzed by someone who does that as their profession, which can take a couple more days to get that person scheduled, depending on everybody's availability in their schedule. And remember, you have that deadline that has to be met in order to finalize the inspection and turn in an inspection response. So, again, getting things done sooner rather than later is a great idea. Now, here in the Indianapolis area, home inspection is going to cost you, I would say, somewhere between $500 and $600. Some other contractors, if you call in a roofer or a foundation person, some of them do free estimates for you, some do not. So it really just depends. But you can rest assured that an initial inspection is going to cost you $500 to $600, and you pay for that when you schedule it. That is not something that is paid at closing. So that's money you're going to have set aside right up front, in addition to the earnest money, and go ahead and have the inspection. With the inspection, I highly recommend that you be there, whether it's you and your spouse or your significant other. And if you can't be there, have a family member, somebody that you trust to be there. A realtor may or may not be there. Totally depends on the realtor and how they kind of work. I personally look at it as not my house, not my money. I'm going to get that inspection report back to me anyway. So I'll be able to read it and kind of understand what it was the inspector saw. Think of it in terms of creating your to do list. You're about to be the owner of that house in a few weeks. And this is kind of starting your to do list of things that you probably will need to address when you get in there, depending on what's important to you. Now, major items like defects and safety concerns, probably things you're going to address in the inspection response because, according to the purchase agreement, those are the things that you can ask for that the seller needs to address in some way, shape, or form. But other things, cosmetic things, you don't like the paint color in one room. Perhaps the flooring needs to be replaced because it's old and raggedy carpeting, or some boards are potentially loose if it's plank flooring or something like that, or they're just wear and tear on it. Well, that's probably more cosmetic than it is defect or safety concern, but it may be something you want to address later on. An inspection, depending on the size of the house, is going to take 2 to 3 to maybe 4 hours. It's recommended that you're there, maybe not for the whole time. I would say talk to the inspection company that you schedule, but definitely plan to be there because that inspector should walk you through the house, show you the things that they found, and point out areas of concern. The third cost to you upfront, right after you get under contract, is probably going to be an appraisal. Now, if you are a cash buyer, then this really doesn't pertain to you. An appraisal has to do with the lending portion of the show. A lender is going to hire or work with an appraisal company that's going to come out and assess the value of the house. As the person who is buying the house, you're going to have to pay for that. Depending on who the appraisal company is, again, you're probably looking at about $500 to $600. Again, paid for upfront. Those are the three definite costs that you're going to have up front. You have the earnest money, you have the inspection money, and you have the appraisal money. Otherwise, unless you're using some other contractor, you don't have any more money due until closing. So keep that bank account open and feed it so that you have money in there for your down payment and all your closing costs, and hopefully money left over at the end to be able to renovate your new house. Here's what happens with the appraisal. This is not something that you have to be there for. The appraiser is going to schedule a time to come out to the house. They're going to do a walkthrough. What they are trying to do is assess their value of the house. Now, unfortunately, this is truly only one person's impression of the price of the house, but it's kind of related to, not kind of, it is related to the purchase agreement. Now, what they are trying to figure out is the value of the house because the bank who has agreed to give you a loan to buy this house is only going to loan you money up to the value that the appraiser says the house is worth. For example, if you are under contract to buy a house for $300,000, if that appraiser comes in and says the value of this house is $290,000, well, now you have a $10,000 gap and something needs to be done because your purchase agreement says you're going to pay $300,000 for the house. Now, the purchase agreement does state that if the appraisal doesn't meet the purchase price, that either party could cancel the deal. Hopefully, no one wants that, and hopefully, a negotiation can be worked out. I like to tell people that there are four possibilities at this point. Possibility number one, your buyer's agent, the person you're working with, should go to the selling agent and say, hey, the appraisal came in low. Do your clients Are your clients willing to lower the price of the house to meet the appraisal? So in this case, my example, going from 300,000 down to 290,000, if they're cool with that, you sign a new amendment to change the price and you move on towards closing and whatever process comes next. If the seller says, I'm not dropping the price $10,000, the agent is probably going to ask you, are the buyers able to add $10,000 over the low appraisal? What that means is that you have your down payment based on your loan. You have all the closing costs that are required. You've already paid the earnest money. You've already paid the inspection and the appraisal. And now, do you have an additional $10,000 to add on top of all of that to make the final price be $300,000? Maybe you do. And if that works for you and you're comfortable with it, that's totally possible. And you can go to closing. Option three, meet somewhere in between. Notice I didn't say meet in the middle. If the buyer has some extra money, maybe they can borrow money from a relative, maybe they can have a bake sale and earn some extra money, who knows? But if you can add 500 or 1,000 or maybe even 5,000, whatever it is you might have extra to add on top of that low appraisal, then you go to the selling agent and you say, hey, they can add in $1,000 over the top. If the seller is willing to drop it $9,000 in my scenario, now we have a $291,000 deal. You still got to sign an amendment to change the purchase price, but that is another way to get to the closing table. If none of those three options work, then either side can technically say, well, this isn't going to work out and kill the deal. And now the seller has to go and probably put their house back on the market and start from scratch. They got to find a new buyer, which means potentially open houses, house walkthroughs, new negotiations, potentially new appraisal, new inspection, everybody coming through and doing everything new. And now the seller has to wait potentially an additional month to month and a half, if not longer, to get to the closing. Truth be told, it's in the seller's best interest to try and negotiate a better deal that can get to the closing table. Otherwise, they're starting basically over. All right, so those are the three things up front. Now, let me get back to the inspection portion. So after you have your inspection, you and your agent are going to go through that and you are going to decide what it is that's important to you that you feel you want the seller to address. Now, those need to be defects and safety concerns. And with that, you're going to ask the seller to fix or repair the issue. Uh, you should always ask for it to be a licensed professional or a professional contractor, not just some random person or the homeowner saying, yeah, I'll take care of fixing that plumbing myself. I mean, unless they happen to be a professional plumber, that's never a really good idea. Plus, you want to have receipts because you want to make sure it was done correctly And if not, later when you're the homeowner, you have the receipt to go back and talk to that particular contractor and say, hey, you were here last month, fix this for the previous owner. It's not working correctly. Need you to come take care of that. Outside of fixing or repairing things, another option that the sellers can do is to replace something. Potentially, you have appliances that don't work. You have something, maybe some plumbing is old, corroded, whatever, and just needs to be completely replaced. Maybe it needs a whole new roof. Who knows? But replacing things is another option. And a third option could be the possibility that they change pricing. Now, that can be in the form of lowering the purchase price of the house to accommodate for the cost you're going to accrue to fix it when you own it, or potentially paying money towards your closing costs, which can save you money at the closing table. And all that money you've been saving, now you have extra money. You're still the one who's going to be responsible for fixing whatever it is, but now you have that extra money that you've been holding on to that you didn't need for down payment because the seller has taken care of some of your closing costs, and you can utilize that to help you fix it when you own the house. There's a possibility this is a new negotiation. You send over a list, long or short, to the seller called an inspection response. They have the option to say, yes, I'm going to address some of these things. I'm going to address all of these things, or I'm not going to address any of them. You can counter that, or you can actually walk away. If they choose not to address something that's considered a defect as defined in the purchase agreement, or not to your satisfaction as the buyer, you can actually kill the deal altogether. Unfortunately, then you're also going out shopping for a different house. So negotiating there is always a good idea. If you, as the buyer, ask for something that is not a defect and the seller says they're not going to address it and you kill the deal because they're not addressing all of your concerns, if it's not a defect, they don't necessarily have to fix it. And if you choose to walk away, they could say, well, I'm keeping the earnest money because the home has now been off the market for 3 or 4 weeks. We've been through all this nonsense and the home is ready to go for you and you're choosing to back away. Well, we're going to keep the earnest money. That can become a big fight. Lawsuits can be involved, lawyers can be involved, becomes a big mess. So definitely make sure you stick to defects and safety things when you are addressing an inspection response. All right, now on to happy news. Inspection goes well. The appraisal comes back. You've already worked out either it came at value or better, or potentially lower, but you've negotiated it. And now you're just waiting. And this could be a wait of a week, a couple of days, maybe even a couple more weeks, because the title company is doing all of their work while the lender is doing all the background work on your loan and making sure you're still going to qualify for this. They're going to keep asking you for some bank statements and things like that to make sure you're still employed and still getting paid and all of that. The title company here in Indiana is the one who essentially orchestrates the closing. Title company is doing a title search on the house. They're making sure that the person who currently says they own the house actually does. They're making sure there's no long lost relatives that can somehow claim ownership. They're making sure that the homeowner who currently owns the house doesn't have any liens on it. Do have their taxes up to date? Have they paid all their HOA dues? Do they have any maintenance liens on the house, like they hired a contractor and then never paid them and they put a lien on the house for that? There are various things that can slow this process down as the title company works to clear up some of the background things on it, but hopefully everything is good. And then the title company says, all right, we got everything we need. Then your lender says, we are clear to close, which means they have finalized all of their documentation and all of their background stuff. And they have now agreed, okay, we've got everything we need. Let's go to closing. You should have a final walkthrough. Now, this I usually do the day before closing. Purpose of the final walkthrough is to go there with your agent one final time, and you want to double check to make sure that the seller has done everything they were supposed to do. So if in the inspection you ask them to fix something or replace something and leave receipts and all of that, now is the time at the final walkthrough that you are checking to make sure that was done to your satisfaction and done correctly. You're also double checking the house in general to make sure that nothing new has shown up. Is there a new hole in the carpet? Is there a new leak in the ceiling? Did they put a hole in the wall if they were trying to move furniture out of the house if the house is empty when you get there? There's a lot of things that you're double checking just to make sure the home is still in good condition. And if it's not, or if they didn't address something on the inspection they were supposed to, that can actually hold up closing. Everything is contractual. So if they didn't do something they were supposed to do, well, I wouldn't necessarily go through with buying the house either. So you want to make sure that you're definitely doing a final walkthrough to make sure the house is in good condition. Closing is scheduled probably at the title company's office. Both parties show up. Sometimes they're done separately depending on the schedule of everybody. They don't necessarily have to close at the same time. The majority of the time, I say they probably do. Everybody shows up, seller sign their documents, buyer sign their documents, and you're done. Now, possession of the house is negotiated in the purchase agreement originally. So sometimes you're going to get the keys at closing so you can move in right away. Sometimes you've given the seller couple of hours, couple of days, maybe even a couple of weeks to remain in the house. Maybe they need their home they're moving into to be finalized and finished. Who knows what? That should have been something already discussed, but you'll know going to closing whether you're getting the keys or whether you are waiting until later to get the keys to actually move in. But congratulations, you've now closed on a house. So yeah, once your offer is accepted, there's still a lot that needs to be done. And I don't want you to walk through that alone. If you're buying in the Indianapolis area and you want someone to be with you every step of the way to clear up any confusion, that's literally what I do. Got questions? Just drop them in the comments. I'm happy to help out. Feel free to share this with someone else that you know who might be looking to buy a home for the first time. I'm here to help. Thanks for watching.